I don't want to be the greatest comedian. I don't even want to be like known as Naveen's a great comedian. I don't want any of that. I just wanted that people who pay for the show should get their money's worth. People who have trusted in this good name that you've given me, they shouldn't go back disappointed. When you first meet with God, you're so filled with love, it's almost blinding. You're like, I'll do anything, God, I'll do anything. And then when actually the time comes for you to just put up an Instagram post saying that you believe in God, if it comes at a cost, it's worth the cost. If it means one person can find God, it's worth it.
Hello and welcome. This is the DeadAnt ChatRoom and I'm your host, Bhanush Kapil. Joining us today is comedian, writer and actor Naveen Richard. Welcome to the show, Naveen.
Hi, thank you very much for having me, Bhanush.
So Naveen, you're on the road right now. You're touring a new show called Family Friendly Jokes for friendly families and unmarrieds also, which is quite a mouthful. Tell us about the show. What do you expect from this one?
Yeah, it's some classic, relatable stuff. And some classic observational humor, it's got the usual dose of, silliness, couple of absurd jokes for those who don't want the usual relatable stuff. So I think there's something in it for everyone. I know there are bits in the show where old people can laugh, and there are some bits in the show where like comedy connoisseurs will laugh because they feel like, nobody else is getting this, but I'm getting it. So there's a bit of everything in it.
So your last special, Relatively Relatable, came out just as the COVID-19 pandemic really sort of became real for us in India. That must have been a rough launch.
No, it was so perfect. It was almost a miracle because, at least for me, my special launched just, I think, 2-3 days after the lockdown started or something like that. So it was when no one knew how long the lockdown would be. Everyone thought it's like a 2-week thing, which is what they told us. So everyone used that 2 weeks to really just watch as much as they could. And that's exactly when my special launched. So it was a miracle, actually, how it launched at that time. Yeah.
Did you miss the opportunity to then sort of have a triumphant tour, take it live? Because obviously you couldn't go on tour for a while.
No, I didn't miss a thing, man. It was pretty awesome because after that launched and it did well, I was able to do a lot of online shows. There was a lot of, corporates and all of them were, looking to do anything to keep their employees entertained. So Friday, they'd be like, let's just do a show. You can do shows sitting from home. So yeah, that way as well, it helped being at home and able to do these shows. It was good. It was good. I didn't write any new jokes. I didn't write very many new jokes in about a year and a half, except what would come organically when I would write for some of these corporate shows. Otherwise, yeah.
So family friendly jokes, are these older jokes as well as newer jokes, or are these jokes that were written since Relatively Relatable?
I think there was definitely some jokes that I started writing after I did my last special. I think there were a few months after I recorded my last special, but it hadn't come out. Because, of course, we're all ready. Like, you're like, okay, I've taped my special. It's going to release a few months. You want to be ready for your next tour. So then I started writing some stuff, which then I shelved for a while. So very little bit of it is written earlier, maybe like 1 or 2 jokes. Everything else is new, which I wrote about 2 months before I started the tour. So for 2 years, I didn't really write much.
And is there that pressure to sort of write about the pandemic? Are there a lot of pandemic jokes in there, or did you just avoid that?
There was no pressure, but of course, it's pretty funny. The whole RT-PCR experience is so relatable. Getting vaccines is, relatable. So there was some stuff, So the first 20 minutes is all about like health products and health food and vitamin C and all the washing your hands and stuff like that, which came organically.
Like what sort of process what sort of stage of the development process is the show? Are you already looking at recording it as a special, or is that something that you're going to tour it with it for a while?
Well, I recorded it yesterday, man, twice already at the same place I recorded the last special. I recorded it twice I don't know if I'll release it as a special or a smaller clips. But I mean, the things I've recorded it 4 times already. Twice in Chennai, about a month ago, and then yesterday in Bangalore, And I'm like, all right, whichever which did the best in whichever city, because yeah, it's been a while since I've really uploaded some stand up on YouTube. I'm like, all right, let's use this one. Let's just put all of these clips out on YouTube, is what I'm thinking, at least.
One of the other major shifts that happened during the pandemic, which I discovered in an interview you've done, is that you also sort of rediscovered your relationship with God. And do you want to share anything about that experience and whether it's changed anything in your approach to comedy or the comedy industry?
Yeah, I did. Find God, or he found me, I guess, in April of 2020, which was the special it released. And, it kind of, yeah, everything's going well. But then when I met with God in April 2020, it was such a stark kind of face-to-face kind of confrontation with him. The confrontation sounds heavy, but it was such a beautiful thing. It made me realize, well, my actions have consequences and my words have consequences, in the sense that I can't just flippantly say whatever I want, have no responsibility, because if there is a God, then there are consequences to your actions and words. And as it got me thinking. It's something my mother always used to tell me, like, why do you use bad words when there are kids watching you? Because my content was relatively like kid friendly, except for every once in a while, or one show that I would do where there was cursing, right? And I always leaned towards family friendly content, but I never really committed to it. But when I found God, I'm like, yeah, because when we grew up as children, we had television, which had regulation by the government, like what could be broadcast. So we were protected in that sense. Now there's no protection for children. They could end up on any part of the internet watching anything. And I'm like, okay, so then that gives us the responsibility. That the government's not gonna, they can't control what's on the internet. Then I think we have to take responsibility for that. So then it made it very easy for me when I would write a joke, and even if I had the idea of it could go in that direction, I'm like, no, which I didn't have the courage to earlier, because earlier the temptation is always there, but it's such a funny joke. Now I'm like, no, but God wouldn't approve this. So it's an easy no for that. So that really changed my comedy writing process. And comedy became much, much easier to write. I never had the chance to do any open mics because I live on a farm, far away from the city in Kerala. And I didn't have the chance to do open mics. So I would just pray and be like, all right, God, earlier I wanted it to be all about myself, and now it's going to be all about you. So don't let me, I don't want to be the greatest comedian. I don't even want to be like known as Naveen's a great comedian. I don't want any of that. I just want it that people who pay for the show should get their money's worth. People who've trusted in this good name that you've given me, they shouldn't go back disappointed. So even before a show, like even before yesterday's show, you're tempted to pray, like, God, let the show go great, so that, I don't look bad on stage, or, all that. But then I've learned to pray, no, God, there are so many people who've come here. I know moms who've come here who just had a baby and they're really looking to just have a good time. People who, for them, $500 is a big deal. And people who've driven like 2 hours and stuff to come. I'm like, no, we should give them a good experience. So when that happens and all pride goes out the window, and then you're asking for the right thing, then the pressure goes off to perform and exalt yourself. So many things I've learned. Yeah.
And that sort of goes, not to put comedy in a box, but that does sort of go against the way a lot of people seem to conceive comedy now, which is it has to be edgy. It has to be sort of, there is a sort of like almost childish fun in tweaking people's noses and like provoking. Being someone who's not just in terms of comedy, but being someone who talks about your relationship with God openly, say in the comedy industry, does that sort of cause any frictions, or does that give you any cause for concern? Did you think twice about talking about this publicly?
Yeah, well, when you first meet with God, you're so filled with love, it's almost blinding. You're like, I'll do anything, God, I'll do anything for you. And then when actually the time comes for you to just put up an Instagram post saying that you believe in God, yeah, and then you feel like a coward, like, God, what if I lose out on work? And I'm like, what am I worried about? It's this God who owns the universe. And I know my motivation is clear. It's not to get any attention for myself, it's to help people out. And if it comes at a cost of whatever, some people stop following me, or somebody doesn't want to work with me. I'm like, if it comes at a cost, it's worth the cost. If it means one person can find God, it's worth it. And yeah, I've shared this with pretty much every comedian that I care for, which is almost everyone, because I know that everyone needs him, and I know everyone everyone's got a void, right? And comedy is not going to fill it. Everyone knows it. Everybody knows that comedy won't fill the void. So since I found it, it would be very selfish of me not to share it. And yeah, it would be selfish of me not to share it, even if it means it comes at a cost. So I just share it anyway.
Coming back to sort of more work-oriented stuff, it's been a while since Better Life Foundation and Pushpa Wali, and I noticed you still make skits that you put up on Instagram. So that instinct to write and act is still there. Do you have any plans for more scripted comedy?
Scripted comedy, well, I'm not working on anything in the web series or, OTT platform space as of now, because again, I don't know about writing on a show where I might not agree with the values of, whatever that, which I earlier used to be okay with. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to write something till I'm sure that this is a message that needs to be shared. And I'm leaning more towards real life stories, even if there's a comedic angle to it. And the thing is, I end up in pretty absurd situations in day-to-day life. So I have enough real stories to tell. But so if I were to work on something really big, it would, like a big thing, I know it would have not a forced message, but something in there. And yeah, with Instagram, man, honestly, I don't try to force it. I'm like, if something really funny comes to my head and I do it immediately right then I do it. Any idea that sticks for more than a few weeks stops being funny. So I try not to overthink it. And in the moment, I'm like, all right. And then within this day, we have to finish it. That's how I've been writing my Instagram stuff, at least.
So other than this new show, what else do you have in the pipeline at the moment?
Other than this, nothing actually. Take it one day at a time. This is something even before, last couple of years, I had this, that you try to do two things at once, both are going to end up a little bit less good than they could have been, but you give one thing. So I remember when I was writing Better Life Foundation, I completely stopped doing stand-up for a whole year or something. And so BLF came out pretty well, they said. But when I started doing stand-up again, it was really scary. It was like I had to start almost from scratch again and just building up a reputation in the market and learning how to write. It was scary, but it was worth what we did for BLF. And then when I wrote my this relatively relatable as well, I didn't do anything. I even stopped doing Instagram content for that 8 months, because you just want your brain pattern to start thinking like that. And then again, I think it was worth it. And I would always be worried when people would try to do 2-3 things, because when you have some success in something, the world will come and try to push you to do 3 things. And okay, delegate this, delegate that. So once I start editing this stand-up and release it, then I'll see. I'll see what God places in my way next. I'm not sure what it'll be. But as of now, I've got a few more shows left to do. Might do like a small second run of this tour as well. Maybe just in a few cities where we sold out pretty quickly. Might go to Chennai and Bangalore and stuff like that again. Then release the stand-up, and then we'll see what happens next. Yeah.
And so now, what I realize is it's also been 10 years now since you broke out as a finalist on the Comedy Central India Comedy Festival, which is 2012. So before we leave, just wanted to ask you, looking back, if there's any reflections on the journey that you want to share.
Oh, man. Reflections. Comedy Central Festival thing. I remember I was a finalist. Zakir won that. I think definitely we were back then in a sort of golden age stand-up, which, okay, but more than English stand-up, I think we got opportunities to create shows that we never imagined we would get, creating some really silly shows like Star Boys and Better Life Foundation and things like that, which I thought were at least like 10 years off. And to get the opportunity to do that when you're around 24, 25 and stuff like that was really, really awesome. And that too with great friends, there's that tight-knit the friendship which existed anyway. So it was awesome to be able to do that with friends. And now, we're getting to the age where all, people are getting married, and I wouldn't say split as such, but yeah, we're not doing as much stuff together as much. And not that I'm not saying I miss it or anything, but it was, as I'm reflecting on it, I'm like, yeah, those are really wonderful times. I don't take those for granted, especially the Bangalore gang. And then when we came to Bombay as a Bangalore gang, we found others in Bombay who kind of had a Bangalore vibe about them as well. So we ended up, well, I think it's a vibe that we were looking for when we moved to Bombay, and we found people like that to do shows with. And so then, yeah, man, I'd say that we really, really got some pretty cool opportunities at a young age. I'm thankful for that.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Naveen. Good luck on the show, and hope to see the special soon.
Thank you very much, man. And thank you guys for being very sweet and always remembering my birthday and doing all these sweet little posts all the time. I hardly check Instagram very rarely, so I don't know if I've missed anything, but whenever I do and you guys have posted something, that's really sweet. Like, you made a whole Uncle Francis compilation once. I'm like, who's going through all of this stuff, man? That's really, it's very sweet. So thank you guys.